All right, welcome back to another edition of Outbound Sales No Fluff. I think that's what we're calling it now, Ryan, right? I'm Ronan Pesar.
I
With
forgot
me
now.
is
Bring him back.
my business partner, Ryan Reisert, who's wearing his Call Blitz hat.
You gotta be very clear. Business partner.
Non-sexual partner, Ryan. We're going to talk about call deliverability.
All right, one of my favorite topics.
Outbound is understanding how do I even have enough conversations. Let's dive right into this one, Ryan, because this topic can go deep. We're going to try to keep this one a little bit shorter than usual, but call deliverability. I saw a YouTube comment the other day on one of our videos. The commenter wrote, in Europe, we see like a 10+% dial to connect rate, but in the US, we're struggling to stay at 3%. How do I fix that? How do we answer that?
Yeah, there's a couple different components when it comes to call deliverability. So the first and foremost, which we preach all the time, right? The list is a strategy. One of the problems that you probably face when you're calling US data versus European data is that the data providers that you're buying data from are selling you a bunch of garbage. So in the US, we don't have GDPR and all this other stuff going on. And it's kind of a laggard in terms of the adoption of new technologies. So your dial to connect rate is not actually 3 versus 10%. Your dial to connect rate is 3% because you're calling a bunch of numbers that are just shit numbers, right? So we talked about this before, but data vendors selling you 3 numbers, right? Think about that. Okay, if I call all 3 numbers, I have to make 3 times the number of people to get to the same outcome. So the total dials are 3 times higher. 3 versus 10, you're kind of in that same range. 3.3 times 3 is basically 10, right? So that's one of the issues is the US is selling you a bunch of shit data because they scraped the bottom of the barrel and they're putting a bunch of nonsense in there. And that's going to be a problem. What you want to do is figure out which of the numbers that you're actually trying to call is worth calling. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a second. But the first thing that you're struggling with in the US versus Europe is the data quality itself. The list is a strategy. The quality of the contact information that you're purchasing matters. Typically, what you see in the US is a dial to connect rate anywhere from this like 2 to 5% range if you purchase just premium data. If you just segment it down to the best number out of them and you call cold, you're probably in the 8 to 12% range, which is right in that 10% range you see in Europe. You just have to know how to do it. I'll talk about that in a second. So it's data quality. That's number one. The number two thing is call deliverability. So the shitty dialer that you're using, probably on Twilio, is also causing an issue when you're calling out. So the carriers, just like you can think about email, a lot of people understand that email over the years has been more difficult to deliver because you can't send so many emails in an entire day. You can't send emails too fast. You'll come up as spam. Like you won't be able to deliver your email anymore. Same thing is happening on the phone, right? So if I dial too fast, if I have a low connect rate, if I dial too much from the same caller ID, my number will come up as spam. I won't deliver. The carrier I'm using, the Twilio on the back end of most dialers, is also has reputation. So they call it attestation. So the quality of the number that you're using to call, the reputation of the number you're using to call could also result in you not getting connects. It may not even be showing up as spam. Some carriers don't even deliver the phone. To you, it sounds like you're calling, but it just like rings straight to a voicemail. If you're making a lot of calls and it goes straight to a voicemail, it's likely that your number's fucked. Okay. So these are things that you can think of. It's not always the case. Some people might be swiping there, but these are indicators. Okay. So
And Ryan, on the carrier side, the receiving end of it, in the US, there's 3 major networks. It's basically a 3-company monopoly: Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. T-Mobile recently acquired Sprint, right? So, or whichever one did. So those three networks make up like 90%, maybe more, of mobile users in the US where you're selling to in the US. Each one of those carriers has a different algorithm to detect spam calls, and they are oftentimes state-based as well.
correct.
So there's
Yep.
state level detection, and each carrier. So if you think about that, there's 150 variations across 50 states, across 3 carriers, of what will show up on the other person's phone as junk, spam, likely spam.
Or if it even delivers. Okay.
Or
So
right, if it even delivers as
if it
such.
even delivers. So the first thing is the quality of the contact information. The second is the quality of the number or the dialer that you're using to dial out. Okay. So those are kind of the 2 main problems. Now, what can you do to solve for it? Well, the Disneyland Fast Pass for all of this is just go use Titan X in terms of improving the quality of the data that you use, right? That'll tell you who you should call and who you shouldn't call. The Disneyland Fast Pass for call deliverability is go buy FrontSpin, which does all the number monitoring, the rotation, etc. These are the systems that we use to consistently maintain a 20 to 30% dial to connect rate when run properly. Now, a lot of you are probably saying, well, I can't afford that, or I don't know what to do, etc. So let me give you the poor man's version of this, okay? The poor man's version of this is you need to go run buckets, baby, right? So if you haven't read my book yet, go read chapter 6 in Outbound Sales No Fluff, and I talk about this.
P.S. There's a free copy on our website, outboundoperators.com. So go get your free copy of it on the website. Go ahead. Ryan talks about it in chapter 6. What are buckets, baby?
So in buckets, we got our shitty data that we bought. What we want to do when we call through this data for the first time is try to ensure, so we're moving from uncontacted to working. The first time we call through a list, we want to make sure that the number that we're calling either gets to the person, which would become a priority lead, or the person's voicemail. All right? If we do not get to the person or the person's voicemail, stop calling the fucking number. While you're calling, I'm not going to get into a lot of the details of this. You can go read it in the book as well. But you also want to run some validation, meaning we're looking for the path to the person or the voicemail and the line type. All right? So one way you can improve your connect rate is direct dials will have a higher connect rate than a human transfer than an IVR, meaning a dial tree. All right? So when you call the first time, you want to get to them or their voicemail. You want to document the path. Does it go through a human? That would be a direct. Sorry, does it go direct to the voicemail? That'd be direct. Does it go through a human? There's an operator. I have to ask for a transfer. Or is there a dial tree? And then when I get to the voicemail, do I verify that it's them or not? If I take a list and I call through the first time, I weed out all the bad shit, and then I just focus on my, say, direct validated records, you'll automatically see about a 2x increase in your connect rates. All right, so that's a little hack for you. And then the other thing you want to know is how far you should call into a list. When I call into a list, the first time I dial through, your connect rate in Europe's about 10%. By the time you call through that 5 times, it's going to cut down to about 4 or 5%. So it'll be about half. By 10 times, it's going to be down to like 1 or 2%. That is because when I call through a list, 80% of the people that are likely to pick up will have picked up within 5 attempts, 95% within 10, 98% within 20. So if I'm trying to improve my connect rates, I want to first weed out the shit in the top, and then I don't want to call too far into stuff that's not likely to be reached.
And Ryan, we call this the Pareto principle of cold calling, or if you're not familiar with that, it's the 80-20 rule, which is to say you're going to get 80% of your results from 20% of the actions you take. And so in this case, the 80-20 is the first 5 dials you make on a number are the highest odds of actually connecting with the person calling that number. The next 5 dials, what's remaining of the 80% is 20%. So now you're going to take 80% of that 20, which is how you go from, if I call a list 10 times, I'm going to get through to about, what did you say, 96 is what that comes out to? 96% of the people who will ever answer?
95% within about 10 times, 98 within 20. Think about, there's this massive drop-off, this law of diminishing returns. The reason why your connect rate suffers is 1, quality of the data, 2, quality of the dialer to deliver it, 3, how far you dial into the list, so you need to replenish. So that's kind of the quick and dirty, how do you improve your connect rate? If you're dialing in North America and you want to have at least a 20 to 30% dial to connect rate on average, and you want to use the system that delivers this at scale, you should talk to the outbound operators. Ronan, my boy over here, my partner, can hook you up. We can show you this live. But if
outbound operators,
if you want to try it yourself as well, go check out Titan X. You can also try to hack together the dialer. Go ahead and try to figure this out. But if you really wanted to get it off the ground and not have to, you want a Disneyland Fast Pass. What do they call it now? A Genie Pass?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Fast Pass. I don't go to Disney.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, that's all we have for today.
Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe, drop a comment, give us a like. And as always, we're the Outbound Operators. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.